This is Ed with the Voyage cast, and this is your top 3 in mental health news, what you need to know and why it matters for your life. Today we're covering the neuroscience of spirituality and how it rewires the brain for resilience, why Gen Z might be quietly pushing back against screens with faith, family, and rooted rhythms, and why Maslow's famous hierarchy of needs wasn't actually complete until he placed transcendence at the top. 3 stories, 1 thread. Resilience doesn't come from turning further inward. It comes when we reach beyond ourselves. Let's dive in. The neuroscience of spirituality and resilience. In a recent Times Magazine article highlighting research from a psychologist Lisa Miller at Columbia University and neuroscientist Andrew Newberg at Thomas Jefferson University, and what they're showing us is this. Spirituality doesn't just make people feel better. It literally rewires the brain. We're talking about prayer, meditation, finding a sense of awe in nature, communal worship. All of these practices are linked to lower stress, stronger brain plasticity, and even a quicker recovery after things like trauma. Miller's research shows that people with what she calls a spiritual brain orientation are much less likely to relapse into depression. Kind of like how exercise protects the heart. Spirituality seems to protect the mind. Now here's where this connects to real life. Therapy gives us skills, how to manage emotions, how to challenge distorted thoughts, how even to build healthier relational patterns. And those skills are, of course, valuable, but let me be honest, they only take us so far. Because at some point, people hit a wall. You can manage your thoughts, you can regulate your breathing, but you still wake up in the middle of the night asking, what's the point to all of this? That's where spirituality steps in, not as like a Band-Aid or something like that, but as an anchor. It puts suffering inside of a bigger story. It says this pain isn't the whole picture, and the brain reflects that shift. Now, I've watched clients who were drowning in grief finally catch their breath the moment they said, I don't have to carry this alone. Something bigger is holding me. And you can see it. Their nervous system calms down. Their face softens. It's not magic. That's neurological wiring happening in real time. Neuroscience is simply proving what our souls already know. We were built to seek something beyond ourselves. When we lose that, life starts to crack. When we recover it, healing becomes possible again. So that's what the labs and brain scans are telling us. But what does it look like out in the real world, especially for the youngest generation? That's where our next story takes us. Gen Z is now finding fulfillment in faith and family, not screens. Gen Z has this reputation, the loneliness, most anxious, most screen-addicted generation in history, and honestly, the numbers do back that up. But there's another story bubbling under the surface, which is really encouraging. According to some new research from Springtide and Barna, some young people are making a sharp turn. They're closing the apps, logging off, and rediscovering things that were supposedly outdated, like prayer, dinners with family, handwriting in journals, time outdoors, even sitting in a church pew again. And you know what? They're reporting more happiness, more stability, and more belonging. This matters because it shows us the difference between simulation and connection. You see, screens do stimulate us. They hit the dopamine button, but belonging takes time and repetition. I see it all the time in my office. Young people who are constantly connected, but feel completely unanchored or unloved or unknown or uninvolved or disconnected, really. Because belonging isn't built through likes and followers. It's built around tables, traditions, and rituals. And when Gen Z goes back to those practices, sitting down with family, praying daily, going on long hikes, journaling by hand, something starts to shift in their brains. Their anxiety doesn't just dip a little. Their sense of self actually strengthens. Because finally, they're not trying to invent who they are every single day. They're rooted in something bigger, something more than them, something older than them, something timeless. And here's the thing, this isn't nostalgia speaking. It's not just some romanticized return to the good old days. It's really a kind of recovery. They're rediscovering what humans have always needed and always really known, but some kind of continuity within a community, to be a part of a bigger story. And that brings us to our last story, one that rewrites the very framework of our human flourishing. Why transcendence belongs at the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Most of us learned about Maslow and his hierarchy of needs back when we were in school. Food and shelter at the bottom, safety and belonging above that, then self-esteem, and finally self-actualization at the peak. Well, that was from his work in 1943, A Theory of Human Motivation. But here's what you probably didn't learn. Maslow actually changed his mind. In the late 1960s, he started to realize the pyramid wasn't complete. In 1969, he published an essay called The Farther Reaches of Human Nature. And in it, he said that self-actualization, being your best self, still wasn't enough. It was too inwardly focused. The real pinnacle was transcendence, going beyond the self towards something like God, service, awe, or meaning. Maslow died of a heart attack in 1970, but his unfinished manuscript was published in 1971 under the same title. And in 2006, Michael Koltko Rivera wrote a landmark article in Review of General Psychology that documented all of this, showing that transcendence was Maslow's final insight. This changes the game. For decades, psychology told us the highest goal was self-actualization. Reach your potential. Become your best self. But even Maslow himself admitted that this is not the finish line. This isn't enough. Because if life only revolves around the self, it eventually caves in. Or as we see culturally, we develop a culture of narcissism. Transcendence is what makes suffering bearable. It's what turns trauma into growth. It's what turns fleeting happiness into joy that's actually stable. I've seen people do all of the self-work in the world, therapy, journaling, mindfulness, and still feel hollow. But when they start orienting their lives towards something bigger, God, service, beauty, community, the hollowness begins to lift. Because here's the truth. Without transcendence, self-actualization becomes self-absorption. But with it, healing has space to breathe. Pain doesn't define the story anymore. It gets woven into the fabric of who we are. It's something that gives life meaning. All right, well, thank you so much for joining me today for another episode of the Voyage Cast. If this stirred something in you, challenged you or encouraged you, or maybe even made you pause to think for a moment, give us 5 stars and share it with a friend. Share it with someone you love, share it with someone you hate, maybe someone you're mad at. Share it with anybody in between, because everybody needs to know and everybody needs to be informed on what they can do to help their lives. Also, if this does mean something to you, if you think we've earned it, subscribe. Because subscribing is free. It's like a free gift to me, because I put a lot of work into this and it's a worthy trade-off, I think, huh? All right. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you've got anything to share on these stories, if you have other news that I've missed, if you want to just give me your feedback, share it. Check the show notes for more details on where you can share that, and maybe we'll share what your questions or thoughts are in the next episode. So thanks again for being here. I am Ed, your host, and this is the Voyage Cast, bringing you help beyond the office. Until next time.